The house was a bargain. There was no doubt about it. Situated at the edge of McGregor's pond, with its moss-covered fences and sagging roof, it looked almost forgotten, as though time itself had lost interest in it. A fading for sale sign hung crookedly in the front yard. It was just the kind of place Carl and his family needed. Away from the city, away from the noise, and most importantly, away from the chaos of their lives. Carl was a practical man. His wife, Laura, was a dreamer, always picturing a life of peace and quiet, of long walks by the water and reading in a sunlit room. Their daughter, Emma, a quiet 14-year-old, seemed to embrace the idea as well. But as they settled into their new home, a strange feeling hung in the air. An unease that no one could quite put their finger on. It wasn't the house itself. Sure, it creaked with age and the walls were lined with dust, but it had potential. It was the pond. From the moment they arrived, Carl noticed the locals' eyes shift nervously whenever they mentioned it. The old woman at the general store had leaned in close and whispered, "You'll want to stay clear of the pond, dear." Her hands had trembled as she bagged their groceries, her gaze darting to the window. "It's not right, that water. It holds things." Things? Carl had laughed it off. He was a man of reason, of logic. The pond was just a pond, he told himself. A bit eerie, maybe, but nothing more. When they first arrived, the place looked almost picturesque, with the water sparkling under the late afternoon sun, the trees surrounding it like silent sentinels. But then came the first warning. It was Emma who noticed it first, of course. She had always been the sensitive one, a quiet girl who liked to roam the woods by herself. One evening she returned from her walk pale, her wide eyes haunted. She couldn't sleep that night, she said. Too many strange sounds coming from the direction of the water. Carl thought nothing of it. Probably just an animal, he'd said, offering her a glass of water and a comforting smile. You're just not used to the quiet, that's all. But it didn't stop there. Over the next few weeks, Emma's behavior grew more erratic. She wouldn't talk much, not even to Laura. Sometimes she'd stare out the window, her face ashen, as if she were seeing something just beyond the trees, something no one else could see. Then on the evening of the full moon, Emma vanished. Carl's heart sank as he stormed through the house, shouting her name. "Emma!" His voice echoed off the walls, but the house was eerily silent. Laura, frantic, was already outside, calling to her daughter, but there was no answer. No sign of her anywhere. By the time the search party was organized, the sun had long set, and the pond lay still in the moonlight, a mirror to the night sky. Carl stood at the edge, his feet sinking slightly into the soft earth as he scanned the dark water. He knew deep down that Emma wasn't lost in the woods. She was somewhere else, somewhere the locals had warned him about. As the days passed with no sign of Emma, Carl grew desperate. He spoke to the few residents who still lived in the area. They were reluctant to share anything, but one old man, who had a face like weathered leather, finally spoke up. "Don't go near it," he croaked, his voice as dry as the dust on the road. "Not the pond. It's been there for centuries waiting, and when it takes someone, it doesn't let go." Carl's heart hammered in his chest. "What do you mean? What's in the water?" The man's eyes darkened. "It's not the pond that's the problem. It's what's under it, the thing that lurks beneath. We don't talk about it much, but it's there. And if you're foolish enough to go looking, it'll find you." Carl had heard enough. He didn't care what the locals believed. He was going to find his daughter. The thought of Emma, lost in the dark, was unbearable. So he set out alone, armed with nothing more than a flashlight, a rope, and sheer determination. The moon was full again by the time Carl reached the pond. The water was still, unnaturally so. There was no breeze, no sound of insects, nothing. The world seemed to hold its breath. He knelt by the water, peering into its murky depths, but all he saw was the darkness that lay beneath, a blackness so deep and so vast that it felt like it was pulling at him, drawing him in. And then he saw something. At first it was just a shadow flickering beneath the surface. But as Carl leaned closer, his heart leaping into his throat, he saw it, an outline of something massive, something wrong. It was no fish, no animal. The thing beneath the water was far too large, far too unnatural. Carl staggered back, his breath ragged, but before he could turn to flee, a whisper brushed against his ear. It wasn't the wind, it was a voice, low, guttural, a voice that came from the very depths of the pond. "You shouldn't have come." Carl screamed, but the pond swallowed the sound. When the search party found him hours later, all that was left was his flashlight, flickering weakly on the muddy bank of McGregor's pond. His body was never recovered, and as for Emma, she was never found either. The locals still avoid the pond. They speak in hushed tones about the shadow that waits beneath the water and the creature that has waited for centuries for someone foolish enough to disturb it. And sometimes on still nights when the moon is full, you can hear the whispers, soft, coaxing, promising that if you listen long enough, you too might learn the secret of McGregor's pond.